This episode of Vintage Stormfront Freaks has been previously recorded. Brought to you by the AMS Weather Band. Join a community of weather enthusiasts at amsweatherband.org. The Drive Weather app. Avoid dangerous weather on your road trip at driveweatherapp.com. And Midland Radios, built for communication and made for connection at midlandusa.com. And Windstorm Products. For all your hurricane hardware needs, shop windstormproducts.com.
Introduce Dr. Karen Kosiba. Karen's an atmospheric scientist at the Center for Severe Weather Research in Boulder, Colorado. She's a strong believer in experiencing weather from the inside of Doppler on wheels. I love that. Radar truck, it's a radar truck, and she participated in a multitude of field projects, including radar observations of tornadoes and thunderstorms, the experiment rotate, hurricanes and landfall, the verification of the origins of rotation and thunderstorms experiment, VORTEX 2, and Long Lake Axis Parallel Lake Effect Storms Project. Wow. Just to name a few of the things she's done. She's also received a BS in physics at Loyola University, a MS in physics, and an MAT in teacher education at Miami University, and a PhD in atmospheric science at Purdue University. And Karen, I have to say, I've been a big fan of yours, just knowing what you have done for women, especially in the science field, and what you have and your accomplishments. And I guess since when I was a little girl, my dream was to do probably what you're doing, and that was to study tornadoes and to figure out why. But I kind of went a different direction. I think a lot of folks out there are probably curious, how did a little girl get to this point in her life? I mean, it's just an incredible, incredible career for you.
Oh, you're actually asking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how did you start? Were you always interested in weather, or is this something that came later after your physics?
I feel like I should have some good backstory here. Because
you don't have to. Nope.
I know. And then there was this. No. I think as a kid, I was always interested in the world around me. And I was super afraid, actually, of thunderstorms and lightning. And at some point in my life, I was also really afraid of tornadoes. And probably ultimately that inspired me to get into meteorology and study those things and to learn more and to really understand stuff and not be afraid of it. But I was pretty aimless for a while, as you could tell by my degrees in physics, which seemed like they should do something. Yeah, they should take me somewhere.
Right.
So then, somehow, some way, I guess eventually when I grew up, I realized that there's a lot of unanswered questions in meteorology, and I had some fun opportunities as a student to go work with the Doppler on wheels stuff. And I really liked the idea of working with that kind of technology, and then the idea of sort of designing my own experiments and going out in the field and actually collecting the data and getting the data that I wanted to answer these questions. So that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years.
Wow.
You're not afraid of tornadoes? Because I'm still afraid of tornadoes.
The funny thing is that when I'm doing research and stuff, that I'm so absorbed in what I'm doing. I am so disengaged, which is always horrible, from what's actually happening outside of the radar truck. I'm so into getting the data, getting in the right spot, making sure everything looks good, that I think I've probably actually looked out the window probably 3 times.
Wow.
Which is pretty horrible. Everybody's always look, tornado. And I'm like, oh,
so Karen, what's your role with the team? So obviously when you're doing that, you've got the Dow trucks, but you've got a number of others in vehicles as part of the team typically, right? So what's your role within the Dow truck? Are you trying to help place people? Are you checking on something else? What role do you play?
Well, it's evolved, but basically what I'm doing is, I'm trying to help place people. I'm usually running one of the radars because, especially for tornadoes, obviously you're, looking at where the tornado is and where people need to be relative to that. So I'm busy doing the radar stuff, and then also placing people, making decisions, working with my colleagues out there to hopefully get us in the best possible place. So what's in the field,
biggest, what's the biggest group you've had that you guys have been a part of all these projects you've been in?
Yeah, I mean, Vortex 2 is big, like, not just our group, but like, outside all these different groups there. So Vortex 2 had a lot of people in it, 100 plus. I did this project called Pecan, which also had like 100 plus people. But for our group, for CSWR, it just depends on the project, but sometimes, suddenly we have 30 people that I'm responsible for,
Wow.
During a project like that, because we have, 3 radar trucks, 4 mesonettes and stuff like that.
So where are the trucks tonight?
They might be in Panama, actually.
What?
I'm not
Panama.
exactly, yes. So we're doing a project this fall in Argentina called Relampago. And a week ago, we loaded the trucks up in Houston, and they're on a boat headed towards Buenos Aires. So I think last I heard, they were somewhere near Panama.
Oh my God. So what are you guys going to be doing the research with that, or they're going to be using it, their government, or how's that working?
We're actually doing the research. So we do all these different types of projects. I mean, some of these projects that I've done, I'm just what we call project science, not just, but it's not my research. I'm just helping to make sure that the radars are out there and ready and all that kind of stuff, which is fun because it's fun to see all these different types of weather phenomena that I'm not necessarily studying. But Relampago, we're actually scientists in that project as well. So we're bringing out our stuff, but also we have a scientific interest in getting data out there.
Wow.
So if it's on a boat, like how much insurance do you have to put on that thing?
If that boat sinks, are you wondering what happens?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we got 2 left.
No, they're all on there. All of our stuff is on there. Yes. Ooh. We have nothing in Boulder right now. Well, we have one radar truck in Boulder. We're actually building a new radar that we're trying to get out there. It's a bit fast, but we're going to do it.
What kind of radar is it?
It's going to be so the Doppler on wheels, the Dow ones that we've been routinely operating are X-band radars. So they have a 3.5 centimeter wavelength, and they're good for a lot of things. So they're good for studying tornadoes, and they're kind of a good mix for seeing small scale stuff and somewhat larger scale stuff. But at a certain point, they attenuate. So you can't see sometimes, back of supercell thunderstorms, or if you're doing this big project with these MCSs, these really big rainy things, you can't, see the whole thing really well. So the C-band radar, which is a 5 centimeter wavelength radar, is also going to be on a truck, but it has a really cool design where normally the antenna is just fixed on the pedestal and we can get down the road no problem. But in order to get the same beam width with the C-band, so with this 5 centimeter radar, we have this antenna that we actually assemble in the field. So we have this really big, 12-foot antenna that you can't drive with, but it comes in 2 pieces. And then once we put the radar there, we'll basically assemble the antenna with a crane.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it'll be pretty cool.
How long does that take?
I don't know. We're building it right now.
That doesn't sound overly mobile.
It's deployable. So the idea basically is, you wouldn't go tornado chasing with it, but, something for like a hurricane or something, where you have 2 or 3 hours to set up the radar, you could set it up in 2 or 3 hours, keep it there, and then disassemble it, 2 or 3 hours again.
So Dr. Kosiba, explain to everybody, when you take the Dow out, is that something that's already, like you're only doing some kind of specific research, or do you just on a chase day, take it out there and see if you can get a tornado?
No, and I know people always think that. We do have some flexibility with the way a couple of free, weeks or a month a year that we could sort of do what we want with it. But basically what they are right now is the National Science Foundation. They're part of their observable network. So us, just like any other researcher out there, actually has to request to use them. So if we wanted to use the Dows for, tornado chasing or hurricanes, we actually have to ask to use them and put together a proposal.
Who else would be using them?
I mean, there's other projects that are going on. I mean, there's a lot of different projects that people request them for, just different researchers at different universities. And yeah, I mean, if they're not being used, which, I mean, they're usually, during a year, we're pretty busy, and this has been a pretty busy year, but I mean, you have to have money and stuff to take them out, so it's like, we can't just spend our money on whatever we want to do.
It's not like going to the library and checking out a book, right?
No.
Take the Dow out.
I think I'll take the Dow out now. No, there's a review process for that. But yes, so we are also subject to that as well.
Have you been a part of the VORTEX Southeast project?
I personally have as a scientist, but we have not bringing out our radars to that project. So maybe in future years we'll be doing that.
So
Okay.
so who's doing that then?
So
Who's providing the vehicles?
well, I can give you this big long explanation of how Vortex SE works. But the super short explanation is that
Yes.
Vortex SE is NOAA sponsored. So we are NSF sponsored, our vehicles. So actually NOAA would have to pay a little bit to take out our vehicles. So places like the National Severe Storms Lab, they have a NOXP radar, an X-band radar. And there's a bunch of NOAA sponsored stuff out there that are getting some funding. And then Kevin Knupp at the University of Alabama, he has a mobile radar and some mobile systems. So,
were you a part of the original Vortex project?
God, I'm not that old. No,
I didn't know maybe at what point you came into all that. But.
No. And actually, in all fairness, I probably could have been a college student, but no, I was not part of the original.
Okay. Project. So what years was that?
96 and 97, I think, or 97 and 98, something like that. I think those are.
Phil, you're trying to guess her age. Knock it off.
No, not at all. I'm trying to really figure out when that was, because truthfully, I didn't think it was that long ago. And when you say late 90s, to me, that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
So that's my apologies.
Okay, so tell us about the. I was interested about the lake effect. What you guys are doing with that project.
Yeah, so the original project, actually the one you named, obviously up in upstate New York on Lake Ontario and also Lake Erie, they got a lot of lake effect snow up there. And the real fun thing about that is that in terms of stuff that you don't know about, is that they don't have really good radar coverage up there. So they actually don't really see these bands that well. I mean, they do see them, and some of them in some places they don't see. So really understanding more about some of this band formation, how it interacts with all these, with the lake, but also sort of the upstream environment. And everybody's probably heard of the Tug Plateau. I think that keeps making the news now recently. And every winter, it seems like the Tug is breaking their records. So looking at that, so the original project was Scott Steiger at the University of whatever's up there, Oswego, New York. And it was just him, and it was a single radar. And then a few years ago, we did a project called OWLS. And I'm not going to remember what the acronym stands for, but it was a much bigger project and it had a lot more investigators in it. Once sort of Scott Steiger, not proved, but sort of showed that the radars were really good for seeing this stuff. So then we brought up 3 of our radars, University of Wyoming, King Air, and a bunch of other instruments. So that was a pretty decent sized project with a lot of different scientists involved, including ourselves. And sadly, I mean, my interest in that was not sadly, but I like things that rotate. And these lake effect bands actually have a lot of what we call mesovortices in them, which, although they look cute on radar, for the most part, they're pretty benign.
Oh my gosh. So I'm assuming that's that tornado. Well, most weather people have some kind of a favorite weather phenomenon. So I'm assuming tornadoes is yours.
Yeah, I think tornadoes is mine. I like hurricanes too. But just because there's a lot of things you don't know about, both, like not you, but a lot that people don't know about tornadoes and hurricanes. So no, they're just interesting in the sense that like it's challenging to observe them, and then there's just challenging questions out there. So it's sort of, but it's also sort of incremental, moving science forward in these things.
Right.
Anything interesting you about Hawaii right now?
I mean, they're going to get outer rain bands probably.
Yeah.
Obviously that's interesting in some ways, but it doesn't look like they're going to get a direct hit, at least right now. No. At least by the eye wall, I should. When I say direct hit, I'm probably very picky about what that means.
Yeah. Plus Panama to Hawaii. That's going to be a tough time.
Yeah, that's a tough time to get there.
Turn them around.
Although they're on a boat, so we could actually get the eye wall.
So tell us, Karen, a little bit. Obviously, your background and some of the storms and tornadoes, and what have been some of the most memorable ones for you?
This one time I was in a radar truck, and
it's the same story, huh?
There was a screen with all these colors on it, and it got a little windy.
I mean, there had to have been, like, with these teams, right? All these teams that you've got, there's got to be some high pressure situations where you're putting people.
There has been, and I'm being a little facetious.
God, just remind me not to be a part of your project when you're watching the you're watching the radar. Jeez.
No, it's good because I'm watching it. You want me doing that.
That's true. That's
You
very
don't
true.
want me being like, oh, and then there's this cloud and blah.
So it's stress. Think stress, or then maybe you don't get stressed out. I don't know. What
No,
could have been some exciting moments.
There's been probably 2 standout tornado ones, and hurricane ones are always stressful. Hurricanes are stressful from start to finish.
Wow.
Really?
Why?
Oh, yeah. Hurricanes are super stressful. I'll go back to tornadoes, but hurricanes, just because I guess everybody's, it's hurricane season. So we did Harvey, and that was stressful in the sense that it was really windy. And that was probably the first hurricane that I'd been in. I've done 8 hurricanes I've been in. And that was the first one that the wind was actually more interesting, in the sense that, we actually were getting, wind gusts. I think our peak wind gust there was 143 miles per hour.
Oh my gosh.
Where we were at. So, so that was interesting. But the one that probably there's a Hurricane Isaac, back in whenever. This was like a non-hurricane almost. And we decided, since it was a non-hurricane, to just go for it. Yeah. So there's this peninsula under New Orleans. I can't even think of the name of it, where the Mississippi River goes down. It's basically all swamp. And there's levees. So there's the Mississippi River, and then there's levees on either side. And basically we're let's just go far, far down. And for hurricanes, what we're looking at when we deploy is we're always trying to decide, how close can we get to the coast, and basically not get surged. So, surge is a huge, huge problem in hurricanes, and especially the places that we want to deploy. But we thought this was a not interesting hurricane, so we went way down this peninsula, and we deployed on a levee. And the hurricane was slow and big, and all the models that we looked at, all these forecast models, all these flood forecast models, really just underpredicted the storm surge. And that actually was a storm, I think, that really made the Hurricane Center look at, the storm surge forecast stuff, because we give ourselves obviously a lot of room. Yeah. We don't just give ourselves a foot, but it was getting pretty close. So it was pretty nerve wracking. A boat became unhinged and was sort of floating towards us during the hurricane. So again, it wasn't really windy, but it was windy in the sense it was a hurricane, but the water, and we kind of, and the emergency management officials, they knew we were down there, and they kept calling us, and their tidal gauges, they kept getting all these tidal gauge measurements, and they're like, it says, whatever, 13 feet. They're like, that can't possibly be right, is it? And I'm like, yeah. Yep, it's right. It's right. Wow. It looks right. It's pretty high. It's, so we were a little worried that it might top the levee that we were on. And eventually, after the storm, the levee north of us broke. And we were basically refugees at a fire station for a couple of days down there.
Oh my gosh. So do you guys have limits on how far you'll go? I mean, into the storm, or?
Well, what we're trying to do is we are really trying to get, the right front quadrant of the eye wall. So we're trying to get the nastiest winds that are coming ashore. And it's always an iterative process. It really is. So myself and my colleague, Josh Worman, we're always back and forth. He always plays, devil's advocate on the, oh my God, let's go out on a barrier island. And I'm always like, oh my God, let's, deploy 50 miles inland. And somehow, we're doing this. We, converge on, I think, what's a sense of, a place that makes sense to deploy. So it does start out sort of funny, where we're both, because he knows I'm sort of conservative, and I know he's, on the other end. So we're both, and then we also, both just go extreme about it. But again, go ahead.
What are the trucks rated for wind? Because you've been talking a lot about winds. I'm like,
They survived 143 mile an hour gust. Yeah, I don't know what they're rated for wind.
They're
obviously,
heavy.
Yeah, they're high.
That helps.
they weigh 26,000 pounds. They're big, heavy trucks.
Okay.
In the hurricane, they get horrible gas mileage. In Hurricane Harvey, we sort of actually did a slightly dumb thing, is that we deployed at an airport, which is one of our places we kind of like to deploy because it's a nice, flat, open area. Yeah. But some of the airport buildings, because it actually ended up being a wind event, came apart. So there was a little bit of, debris that actually took out some of our anemometers at a certain point. But again, the trucks are heavy and hard, and they're good.
Did Noah know about that? Because they're on line 1 right now.
Yeah, they're calling. They're calling. Hey, so a question. You brought up Dr. Josh Worman. You guys were a part of the Discovery Channel Storm Chasers TV series. Give me one word to describe your experience with that production.
One word.
What do you think?
Can I give you more than one word?
Yeah, sure. What the hell? We're crazy. We're wild and crazy. Let's go nuts.
Let's go crazy. It was good. In some ways, it was good. I mean, there was, those were years that we didn't have a lot of NSF funding. A lot of times, we're trying to, be creative and find other ways to get funded to do stuff. And we're trying to do different things for hurricanes and insurance companies. For me, I mean, the funny thing is, for me, I was a graduate student when that happened, actually. So yeah, so they were having a hard time placing, quote unquote, the Karen character. I mean, not the Karen character, but the female meteorologist character, because I guess I don't know what they were thinking, because I think they wanted somebody that maybe asked more questions, or maybe like wanted to fight more with people, or so. I mean, it's TV, right? I mean,
right.
Or scream or something. I mean, but I was a graduate student, and I didn't really know I was going to end up working, with Josh. So, I mean, you kind of wanted to impress people. I mean, and, people that I'd be applying for jobs, would probably be like, really? Oh, we didn't know what a tornado was? Like, or, I mean, we're like, oh God, you were really quarrelsome. Like,
so how'd you play it? So you went into it saying, okay, I'm going to play it this way. How'd you play it?
Yeah, I went into it.
How'd you play your own character?
I went into it being probably really quiet, and they're like, yeah, no. and then they were just never able to find kind of that person that they were looking for. I mean, so then it was just every season, like a new female of some sort came in, and they never tried another female meteorologist again. So, I mean, it was fine. Again, it was good. I mean, and probably in later years.
They could never replace you. That was probably
yeah, that's what I meant to say. I mean, I think if it was now or something, I would have been a different, person on camera. I mean, I would have been probably more free with stuff. Like, no. But
like
I mean,
what? So yeah. So how would you play it today? How would you play your character of Karen Kosiba?
I think I'd be more me, and I probably would be quarrelsome. I mean, sometimes, because I do disagree with stuff, and I am more vocal than I was. I was probably really afraid of looking stupid. So
yeah, you're probably more confident now.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know. I just pictured, like I said, applying for jobs, and people are like, oh, wow. Remember that time you asked that really dumb question?
Right. Yeah, you have to think about that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
and now you're on this show, which is recorded as well.
There you
go. You use that on your resume.
I come a long way. I think ultimately, I didn't want to say bad. I mean, so it was a mixed thing with Discovery Channel, but I mean, I think ultimately it was a good thing. It just wasn't, for me, the right time to be probably that person.
All right. Tonight we welcome Hank Schyma, also known as Pecos Hank. He's a musician, songwriter, filmmaker, and professional storm chaser based in Houston, Texas. He's fronted the rock group Southern Backtones and now the Pecos Hank Band. During the same period, he has directed, produced, and starred in a full-length independent film, several music videos, and a catalog of storm and nature documentation on the Weather Channel, Discovery Channel, National Geographic, and more. He's also served as a storm consultant on a major motion picture, The Last Witch Hunter, with Vin Diesel. Very cool.
Nice.
So, Hank, you're in Houston, so obviously you were around for Hurricane Harvey, right?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, I was being chased, so the storm was coming to my home. And so rather than go out and get footage, I kind of wanted to be with Mom and my wife to make sure our property and our stuff wasn't messed up. The last thing, I didn't want to go off and chase it and then get separated from them. So I got nothing to say about it, except for we just sat and watched the water rise and rise and rise. And luckily, all of my family and friends, most of them came out okay. But for a third of the city, man, it was terrible. They lost everything. Not a lot of lives lost, but all the property that they worked hard for. Places that have never flooded. I mean, in the history of Houston, flooded, up to, 8 feet in their house. And so, but a lot of that stuff was replaceable. I had one guy, a friend of mine, who collected things, and he just, for his whole life, he like hoards and collects old things and old vintage stuff. And so he lost everything.
Aww.
Yeah. Everybody else, is getting their stuff back, getting their carpet back, getting their walls back. But he did lose everything.
That's so sad. I think I did read that it is the worst flood event in recorded history in America, if I believe it. Yeah.
We're going to claim that here, whether it is or not.
I think that's true, but man, that had to be rough, especially like, you're trying to protect your own family. What do? Were you at home, or did you try to get the family out, or what?
No, we just hoped that we were in high ground, and we've never had flooding before, but this was different. I mean, we're getting massive floods here, once every decade, but this was, and we've had ones that were close. Tropical Storm Allison was just a stationary low that just stopped on us and just sat, and so a lot of people lost. And this one maybe barely beat that one, but so yeah, it was terrible.
That is that's the coolest picture behind you.
Mm-hmm.
You got.
Yeah, I was going to say that picture's awesome.
Which one? The girl here with the knife?
Don't get me in trouble,
man. You take that picture behind you?
Yeah, that's
my gosh.
That's the May 24th. There's two of them over here.
Wow.
And that's the second significant tornado, the EF3 of the day.
Wow.
Yeah. I just did a lecture in Ohio University, and Tim Marshall, we were on Facebook after this event, and Tim Marshall was saying that this was one of the most incredible things he'd ever seen. So, it's special if Tim Marshall says something like that, right? And then right underneath that, some guy wrote, "This was the first time I ever went storm chasing."
They're all like that.
Yeah, right. For those of you who don't know, the May 24th, 2016 Dodge City cyclic supercell was dropping photogenic, high-based, well-lit tornadoes, one after another, 2 and 3 on the ground over, not killing anybody on a good road network. So it was something I have waited for and dreamed of my whole life. And so I can die happy.
Yeah. So Hank, I always love to ask this question on the show because I think it gives pretty good insight about their background. But I think you're, one of the have more of a diverse background than most of the people on here. What got you interested in weather and music, and how did that kind of all come about? And did you grow up and want to be a songwriter? Did you want to grow up being a weatherman, or was it kind of both?
Man, it was both. I was a photographer, and I always documented everything. There's a turtle, let's document it. There's a frog, let's document it. And lightning was the elusive thing that you couldn't get, and I remember getting a long negative strike one time. I actually got it, didn't have the branches. And I was like, I got a picture of lightning on 110 film, grainy. And it wasn't until I was about, maybe I was really heavily inspired by Warren Fadley. You guys remember Warren Fadley?
A little bit.
I don't think so.
He was one of the first, maybe the second generation storm chasers that kind of was really good at marketing himself. And so he had a book on the Weather Channel. He had you'd see him talking about, but his photography was beautiful. You've probably seen a lot of his stuff out of Arizona, is where he's based out of, and the lightning. So I went after lightning and started documenting lightning. And then eventually, once you kind of get good at that, you go on to tornadoes.
I've read, Hank, that you like to chase alone. I guess why is that, and what challenges have you come across maybe because of that?
Is that a George Thorogood song? I chase alone.
No, it's going to be our song. I chase alone.
Maybe because do you like to sing in the car? And
oh man, yeah, I think it's all of the above. I might not be a friendly guy to travel with. If you're slowing me down, I mean, you guys can imagine. Okay, if you bring somebody with you and the sirens are going off and they're shopping, they can't decide what candy bar they want. What do you say? Do you go, "Excuse me," or do you bark?
You say, "Hurry your ass up."
Right. And then they pout the rest of the trip, and I'm just like, screw this.
But you got to run into issues though with challenges of having to navigate and drive and have a lookout of the radar and all that stuff. And then when you get to a location and getting all your equipment out, and have you had issues with that in the past?
Yeah, I think so. I've been doing this a long time, and so I probably started really, really, really slow and gradually kind of honed in my whatever you call it, my
Routine.
Thank you. And so I have a very simple system. I don't have a computer to the right. I have a pad and a tablet, whatever they're called, and an iPhone here, and they're right there. And so I tell myself, glance, don't stare. That's when you can get in trouble, is you start looking at that for rotation that isn't there. And so then I have everything is set to where I don't have to take my eyes off the road at all. I can grab a camera over here. I can put it on my tripod here. I can play with all this while keeping my eyes on the road as much as possible. Of course, I do turn away. I'll tell you guys one story. I used to brag about, I remember Margaret Thatcher said, sleeping is for wimps in one of her documentaries or movies. And I was like, yeah, sleeping's for wimps. And I used to think I was tough because I could go these long stretches without sleep, doing coffee and sunflower seeds, by the way, excellent way to keep yourself awake. And one day I was driving and I had a friend a co-pilot with me, and I just picked up a map and just started reading it at the wheel. And so if you can stay awake, but your brain will do. And so that was a big wake up call for me to take a break, try to live to fight another day. If we can stay alive, to do this for decades, I think I tell myself then, we'll get more footage if we can stay alive. So I try to remind myself that.
That's what cruise control's for, isn't it? Just set it and forget it.
Well, I hear they have these cars that drive themselves.
Oh, that would be so cool, wouldn't it?
Do they have tornado sensors though to not drive into the middle of a tornado?
You can disable them. I hear you have to lift under the hood and disable them
with the scissors. Yeah, that would be good.
It's the blue wire, not the green wire.
Oh, geez. Do you ever tell people like where you're going to be just for safety purposes? I mean, I'm checking in maybe with the wife or a friend or somebody.
No, I never know where I'm going to be. That's one of the things I would advise people on storm chasing is don't commit to a spot until it's time to commit. People say, I'm going to be in Kansas City on day 3. It's like, how do you know? You go there and then, and what happens is if you commit to an area early, you become, you start looking for confirmation bias so leave it open until it's time. So I never know where I'm going.
Although I think if I was your wife, I'd probably have a GPS locator on your phone that I could track, so I know where you are. Not for anything bad, just so I know you're safe.
No, there's a thing called Friend Finder. You guys familiar with Friend Finder?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Like a dog tracker.
Yeah.
Find my friend. Find my friends.
Yeah, I can pop up anytime and I can find out where Craig is. But a lot of people aren't cool with that. They don't want you to know where they are all the time.
Especially girlfriends.
Right. Yeah. Like, that sounds.
Well, you can turn it on and off. So when you're chasing, turn it on.
Like girlfriends.
You don't forget to turn it on.
I don't mind. But
yeah.
So equipment wise, then, Hank, what do you use? What do you have in your vehicle when you're out chasing?
I try to go bare bones. Remember when Wi-Fi was starting to catch on, and suddenly you've got access to all this mesoscale analysis. I mean, just boom, boom. You don't have to stop at libraries anymore. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, you can find out what the helicity is, and you can find out, all this. And I caught myself, this was in 2007 when my equipment finally caught up. Other guys were probably doing this more. I caught myself staring at a computer more than looking at the sky. And was choosing what the computer told me to do when clearly that was the storm. But that's not in a more, tornado efficient environment, but it's a bigger storm. And I would go with what the computer said to do. And so finally I put an end to that. I'm a big advocate of use your eyes, for those of us that have chased before, Wi-Fi, you would just drive out into a slight risk area and just stare at the sky. Hopefully it was a clear day. You see the towers go up, and then you go to the mesocyclone, and that's how we got our tornadoes back then. And so I have very minimal, I'm making this a long question. I have very minimal stuff. I've got a tablet, a phone with 2 different screens on, a weather radio that I bought 15 years ago, and then that's it. Cameras.
You use a weather radio?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so what kind of information are you getting off of that?
He'll tell you cell speeds, so you don't have to calculate them. That's the one good thing he's for, because obviously you get your warnings. But he'll say it's moving this fast, and okay, it's moving northwest at this. He'll just one more voice talking to you.
So Hank, that's a pretty good segue into my next question. So where did you get this weather knowledge? Was it just, you just going out and looking at storms and kind of getting a feel for them, and then going up and looking it up, or where did it come from?
It started with surfing. When I was 18, I moved out to Los Angeles to be a rock star, but I ended up delivering pizza instead. and
Was it good
surfing every
pizza?
day.
Was it good pizza?
Oh, it was terrible. To this day, I can't eat. I was a pizza delivery boy at Pizza Hut, and to this day, I can't eat Pizza Hut.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Our next sponsor.
I know. Dawn. Nope.
Right. So, but I can do Papa John's. Oh wait, can we? He's kind of a jerk.
I don't know. Gonna have to censor that one out. MJ.
Right. Okay, censor that out. I didn't say anything. But anyway, so surfing. Then I moved back to Houston after failing at being a rock star out there, and fell in love with surfing. And then I found out you can surf in Houston if you watch the weather. So you get winds coming out of the southeast and the Gulf at 20 knots for a couple days, and you got this really choppy wind swell happening. And then right when a cold front comes through, or any kind of front, you get these clean waves in Texas for this short window of about 3 hours. And so I'm always was watching that. And then I was fortunate enough, I was a photographer at CBS, and I was fortunate enough to work with Dr. Neil Frank and two other meteorologists, Mario Gomez and David Paul. And when you're a photographer at CBS, you don't do anything. You just sit around all day. And I would just pull on their shirts and ask them questions. And to this day, they cut my teeth. The basics that they taught me, I still use the same things they taught me 25 years ago. And then you go to stormtrack.org and you pick up different things along the way, and then of course the college textbooks are great.
Yeah.
Which you can read while you're driving, I hear.
Right. Well, now you have the audiobook.
Yeah, get an audiobook and listen to it.
I wish they had weather textbooks
too.
Oh my gosh, that would be so great.
Although you can't see all the pictures and the diagrams and the skew-tees and all that craziness.
Yeah, Hank, I think you hit on a really good point. I think, especially, I don't want to get too much into this, but especially kids in schools, there needs to be much more of kind of what you do, getting out in the field and getting some field experience. Because really, book knowledge is only so much you can do. You have to develop kind of that instinct, not only for storm chasing, for forecasting. I mean, so much of it is instinct sometimes, because the models are all over the place. So, I think that what you've done is you've done it the right way. So it's really awesome.
So how much of that, Hank, are you using on your target day, like to pick out your target? What information are you using?
I'll use the anything. I probably one day I'll use the NAM. Most of the days I'll start off with the wrap, and I don't even know if that's what everybody's doing. I've just been doing that so long. I'll start off with the wrap, and I'll do a mesoanalysis. And then I'll do the HER on top of that. I'll draw little circles of the HER throughout the day. And one of the things that I do, I don't know if everybody does this, but I print out little maps and draw it out. And it's like remembering something. Like if you're trying to remember song lyrics, if you write it out, you remember it. So by drawing my isobars and drawing my isotherms, I kind of remember an idea, and that might be something that helps. I don't know.
Definitely writing anything out. It's like how I studied. Once you write it out, it's much easier to remember.
Right. I can remember cheating in college, and I would take a pen and I could fit all of my chemistry formulas on a pen. Sorry that I'm not bragging.
Was that like your cheat sheet?
Yeah, but by the time you finished writing them out, you learned them, and then you didn't need to use it.
University line 1.
They're following up on you.
So I ended up not cheating.
Good. That's good. That's what they heard too. So that's good. So all right. So May 31st, 2013, El Reno, Oklahoma. Wildest, it's craziest and the widest tornado in history. Killed 8. 4 of them were storm chasers. Injured 151. You were there. Fill us in a little bit on your day leading up to that and what you saw.
Well, I was lucky in that I was there early. so I didn't have a commute. Even though, you know, I was there waiting. So when you've got time, as you guys know, you know, if you're not driving, it's harder to look at all the data. So I was just sitting there looking at the data, and I even pulled out my map of El Reno area, and I marked all the bridges because, you know, I still use paper maps, and I like to write on them notes while I'm chasing. And so I highlight all the bridges across the Canadian River, you know, like, and so I was just really prepared, and I was in the perfect location prior to initiation. And, you know, the storm, you know, the initial cell mode was northeast, and then it was east, and, you know, then it went tornado warned, and they were saying it was east southeast. But then I'm looking at it going, man, this thing's coming almost due south, you know. So I was there well prepared and in the right spot, so I didn't get caught in the mess as many other people did that might have been traveling, had to punch the core, you know, coming from the north, and to come out of the rain and maybe be a little disoriented. I was in a good spot, but even when I decided to turn and run, the RFD was swinging the back end of my tail out, and I was.
Oh, really? Man.
In a clear, you know, I mean, I was probably, at least a half a mile away from the mesocyclone at that point, and still
it was still whipping you back and forth.
Yeah, it was slinging my back end out from underneath me. And then I stopped to help a lady, and so that put me behind. I thought something terrible had happened, that she was just panicking and wanted to know if her family was okay, and so I made a phone call for her, and then so I really didn't get great.
Where'd you come across her? Where'd you see her?
When I was once the storm dropped, and I got some footage of the first suction vortices, then I bailed and ran south, and then I took a road going. Were you there?
Oh,
okay.
No,
Took one of the paved roads going east, and I saw this lady in the road doing this, and everybody was just driving around her, like, get out of the way, lady. And I thought, oh my God, what's, you know, what happened to her? And you can even tell in the video, people go, you sound kind of like a jerk. And I was a little, I was a little disappointed that she just wanted to use the phone, which is good. I'm glad she wasn't hurt. But I stopped thinking, oh my God, something terrible's happened. She goes, I need to use my phone. So I made a call for her. And,
so was she trying to flag people down?
Yeah, but she was standing in the road trying to. Yeah, and I mean, I thought, yeah, something terrible did happen. Or she was worried about her grandchildren that were possibly in the path of the tornado. So, and at this time, I didn't know it was that bad. At this time, I thought, oh man, this, you know, it was suction vortices. And I remember going, what am I looking at? Like, okay, just film it. At this time, I don't even have any idea of what the scale of the storm was.
Wow.
So what have been some of you've obviously been involved in a lot of other weather projects, Hank, film, video, photography. What have been some of your favorites?
Man, I tell you, right now I'm working on a couple things that I'm not even working is a major overstatement, but basically the guys that are doing some awesome stuff I get to talk to, and one of those is Dr. Lee Orff. I just get to chat with him about his models and his modeling the supercell growing thunderstorms, you know, at 30-kilometer resolution, 20-kilometer resolution. Are you guys familiar with Dr. Lee Orff's work?
The name sounds somewhat familiar, but I don't know.
No.
Oh man, wait till you see his stuff. Go to his YouTube channel after this, Dr. Lee, Leigh, last name Orf, and watch his simulations of supercells at 20 meter resolution and 30 meter resolution, and it will blow your mind. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to validate his models by dovetailing my footage with his simulations.
Oh, that's cool.
Right.
That's
so
cool.
I saw his supercells and was like, this is beautiful. And I've seen that, and I've seen that, and I've seen that. And so he was like, well, show me. And so I'm collaborating with him a little bit by doing that.
Will you set it to music that you actually write?
Well, that's up to him, but he can write music too. So he's a musician as well. So, but anything that I do, it saves a lot of copyright infringement if you just write the music yourself.
Well, let's talk music. Here's my first question, because I've listened to you, love it. But what do you call your musical style? What do you call that? Because it's obviously unique. It's a mix. Yeah, it is.
It's I like old spaghetti westerns. Was a huge influence of mine when I was a kid. Anything with Clint Eastwood in was my favorite movie. I've watched them hundreds of times. And then I love surf music. You know, old rockabilly, Elvis. I love Elvis. So it's a mixture of all that. Spaghetti western, rockabilly, voodoo. Let's call it that.
Stray Cats, maybe.
So
yeah, little Stray Cats are traditional rockabilly.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of that, and then also I love gypsy jazz. If you guys are familiar with gypsy jazz,
Was that Cher? Was that Cher?
Beyonce actually. Beyonce's well known for her gypsy jazz.
Well, what? So then tell me, is there any connection? You got music, you got storm chasing. Have you connected those yet? Are there connections that you've made between those?
The weird thing is that they connected, because on YouTube, I'm getting views because of my tornadoes, but I'm scoring the tornadoes with my music, which is selling songs that I wrote 20 years ago. So somehow these two crazy things have connected. And that's one of the weird things about social media nowadays. One of my favorite examples is there's a guy his passion in life was marbles. And he's got this viral YouTube channel of him doing marble races, and it's funny. It's actually hilarious. He's so into marbles that you watch it and you cheer for him. And so yeah, that's where we've come.
Does he still have them, or has he lost them? No, sorry. I had to.
We need the drums. We need the drums, Phil. Do you have a drum?
Oh, that's great. We should have all seen that coming, and we didn't.
Man,
Yes,
I saw it coming.
You've got a monopoly. You've got a monopoly on the music and on the storm chasing combination there. That's good.
Thank you for tuning in to the Stormfront Freaks podcast. You can watch our bi-weekly show live on youtube.com/stormfrontfreaks and download the audio version on your favorite podcast player. For links to our Patreon team of exclusive benefits, show notes, past shows, new videos, merchandise, and more, visit our website at stormfrontfreaks.com. While you're there, check out our interactive chaser radar from our friends at zoomradar.com. If you'd like to contact us with questions or make comments about the show, shoot us an email to questions@stormfrontfreaks.com or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. Search for Stormfront Freaks. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time and tell a friend about the Stormfront Freaks podcast.